Imagine the roar of the wind, icy blasts swirling through the air, as dark clouds envelop any glimmer of sunlight. You can feel the unforgiving chill biting at your skin, the dampness permeating your clothes. This isn't just a storm, it is a tempest, a violent force of nature that knows no mercy. Tonight, we are looking at a story of survival against overwhelming odds, where the fragility of human existence confronts the relentless might of the natural world. The Auckland Islands, remote and rugged, shift uneasily beneath the weight of history. Here, a group of castaways is thrust into an unyielding struggle for life. After the shipwreck of the Grafton, they find themselves marooned in an environment both breathtaking and brutal, fighting against not only the elements, but also the limitations of their own bodies. Amidst the sharp cliffs and dense scrub of the islands, they face vicious storms, dwindling supplies, and the gnawing spectre of isolation. The two groups that form in the aftermath of disaster will chart divergent paths of despair and resilience, revealing the stark reality of human endurance when hope seems a distant memory. As we delve into this harrowing tale of divided survival, prepare to journey through the shadows of hardship, where determination clashes with despair. This is the story of divided survival, the castaways of the Auckland Isles. Chapter 1. The Perfect Storm, a Schooner's Demise. The sun hangs low on the horizon, casting a muted glow over the restless sea. The waves whisper ominously, each swell a harbinger of what is to come. The Grafton, a modest schooner, tugs at her anchors, eager to escape the oppressive clouds gathering overhead. It is a day unlike others in 1864. The wind rises, curling through the rigging, its voice growing sharper and more urgent. Sailors on deck tense, instinctively glancing to the sky. The clouds thicken, a dark tapestry swirling above. Unease settles over the men like the chill that creeps into their bones. Suddenly, the tempest breaks loose. The first roar of thunder fractures the air, a signal to nature's wrath. The sea rises, furious and unyielding. The Grafton creaks and moans under the strain, protesting as though aware of the fate that awaits her. Rain falls in sheets, swiftly transforming the deck into treacherous slicks of water. Water begins to fill the hold. Panic flares momentarily in the crew's eyes as leadership shouts orders, but the sheer force of the storm renders their voices ineffective. The waves crash against the vessel with towering ferocity. A scream of wood splintering resonates through the madness. The hull shudders violently. The captain, though experienced, finds himself grasping for control over a fate that is rapidly slipping away. Each wave is a hammer, each gust a relentless adversary. The storm stretches on, remorseless, as the Grafton is carried far from safety. As the ship lists precariously, the men scramble to secure anything they can, their hands working feverishly in the chaos. Ropes coil like serpents, and sails flail wildly overhead, lashing about like angry spirits. Frigid salt water sprays across their faces, numbing their skin and chilling their resolve. Then, with a deafening crack, the mast collapses, crashing down onto the deck. The sound reverberates through them, a despairing signal that the end is near. The Grafton, their only refuge, splinters under the relentless assault. They are cast into the black maw of the sea, tumbling end over end as the world around them erupts in fury. One by one, they are swallowed by the waves, the chaotic whirlpool of foam and darkness dragging them down. Chests rise and fall, lungs scream for air, but the ocean is merciless. Seconds stretch into infinity. They fight against an onslaught that seems determined to claim their lives. Then, silence. A break in the violence. They emerge, gasping, limbs flailing against an indifferent sky wrapped in angry clouds. The remnants of the Grafton float eerily, remnants of their lives scattered across the churning water. 5 souls find themselves washed ashore on the Auckland Islands. Their bodies, though battered, still cling to life, shaken but alive. The cold bites at their soaked clothing as they collapse onto the coarse, wet sand. An urgent awareness grips them. Survival instincts ignite, flooding their minds with raw necessity. They rise, exhaustion weighing heavily upon their shoulders. Their breath steams in the crisp air as they take stock of the desolate shoreline. Rugged cliffs loom behind them, a harbinger of both shelter and danger. With little more than remnants clinging to their thoughts, they gather pieces of driftwood and debris, desperate to build something to shield themselves from the elements. Movement is slow, every muscle strenuous and fatigued. They sift through broken crates and tattered sails, searching for supplies among the wreckage. The sound of the sea crashing behind them fades into a dull roar, becoming an odd backdrop to their urgent task. Fingers, numbed from the cold, work methodically to craft rudimentary tools from fragments of their sunken vessel. A broken oar is repurposed, a heavy piece of driftwood shaped into a crude club. As dusk approaches, the men stand together against the encroaching shadow of night. The wind bites into their skin, a reminder of the unforgiving environment surrounding them. Hunger gnaws at their insides. There is no promise of food, no guarantees of shelter. Together, they begin to dig into the earth, forming a hollow space for the night. The air is sharp and biting. The scent of brine lingers faintly as they labor. Fear creeps back as reality sets in. They are isolated, truly alone in a world full of unknowns. Every whispered breeze seems to carry stories of survival, mixed with despair from the countless castaways who have met a similar fate. As darkness envelops the island, the flicking shadows cast by their makeshift fires dance eerily. They sit close, their faces illuminated by faint orange light. Another day has slipped away, and they cling to the frail hope of what is yet to come. The cold deepens, wrapping its fingers around their bones. In this endless expanse of night, they must confront not just the elements, but the very essence of their existence. Each choice they make, each piece of wood they gather, brings them closer to an uncertain fate wrought with hunger, peril, and a fight for survival against the unforgiving wilderness. The realization settles heavy within them. The tempest may have spared their lives, but the real struggle has only just begun. Before we descend further into the dark, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. You won't want to face the rest of this journey alone, and before we continue, drop a comment and tell me where in the world you are watching from tonight. Knowing you are out there, somewhere in the dark, makes this history feel all the more alive. Chapter 2, The Forsaken Bond. A cabin emerges. The morning light stretches slowly across the landscape, offering a false sense of hope. It seeps through the heavy clouds, illuminating the treetops that sway evenly in the brisk wind. The castaways wake, bodies stiff from the cold, clammy grip of the Auckland Isles, a painful reminder of the wetness that clings to their skin. They gather at the scorched remnants of their ship, the Grafton, which now stands as a ghost of survival against the relentless elements. Today, they must face the daunting task of building shelter. They sift through the debris. The boards are warped, waterlogged, and worn, but they are wood, and wood is vital. It suggests warmth, safety, and the beginnings of a new home. They separate into small groups, assessing their skills. Hands tremble with the lingering cold, but determination ignites within. Using salvaged tools, they begin to pry apart the wreckage. Every splintered plank tells a story of hardship and sacrifice. It hums with the echoes of their shared journey. The air carries the sharp scent of wet timber, mingling with the earthy aroma of damp moss. It fills their lungs and drives them to work with purpose. They hold pieces of the Grafton in their hands, memories of adventure and ambition. Now they transform it into a fortress against the elements. Each board they salvage resonates with their evolving bond. Conversations are sparse, but filled with silent understanding, eyes locked in shared resolve. They grasp the weight of their collective plight, and the atmosphere thickens with an unspoken promise to endure together. As sunlight slowly traverses the sky, shadows dance along the forest floor. A rough cabin begins to take shape, emerging from the underbrush like a long-lost friend. They work in rhythm, pounding nails with an echo that reverberates off the surrounding hills. The sound, though heavy, is intoxicating. It carries the notion of permanence, a spot, to shelter their weary souls. Rough-hewn walls rise, and they inch closer to crafting a refuge from the chill. Fingers ache with effort, but they push through as a unified front. At times, they pause, shattered breath visible in the air, eyes scanning the dreary horizon. Uncertain about the days to come, a flicker of hope ignites when they scavenge through the remnants of the Grafton and discover a few cans of supplies, their contents yet to be determined. Hunger gnaws at their stomachs, but the promise of sustenance is a balm. They share the discovery, pooling their resources as they have their labor. With every movement, the atmosphere shifts. Frustration brews among them. Subtle rifts emerge in this newfound camaraderie, a clash of survival instincts echoing through the branches. Some prefer to hoard what little food they find, while others urge cooperation, each voice laced with an undercurrent of fear, trembling as it confronts the spectre of starvation. As twilight approaches, the cabin stands almost complete, a sanctuary against the encroaching night. Exhaustion seeps into their bones, mingling with the dampness surrounding them. Shadows loom large, snapping at their resolve. Their resourcefulness is awe-inspiring and harrowing alike. They gather inside, huddling together, the wooden structure creaking softly with every shift in their weight. The walls breathe with them, carrying whispers of hardship. The space is small but intimate, a circle of warmth fighting against the encroaching darkness outside. With night settling upon them, the wind picks up, howling through the trees like a lament for those lost. The fire is once again lit, small yet fierce. The crackling flame illuminates their faces, tracing grim lines of weariness. Their minds race through the uncertainty ahead. Will the cabin protect them against the storms? Will provisions last through the winter? In hushed tones, perhaps too soft for even themselves to hear, questions rise like vapor in the air. Each thought circles back to the chilling reality. It is not merely the wind they must contend with, but the hunger and despair that gnaw relentlessly at their spirits. A sudden gust rattles the cabin walls, and the flicker of the flame momentarily flickers. They focus on the wood splintering and cracking around them as an icy shiver courses down their spines. This is not simply shelter, it is the crucible of survival. Their breath catches, collective anxiety rising. The compact space they built, though promising warmth, also restricts movement and conversation. The walls seem to close in with the shadows. The reality of their isolation wraps tightly around them. Outside, the forest sways, an unseen enemy lurking in the underbrush. The heavy trees groan, branches creaking under the weight of their burden. The storm has not yet fully descended, but they can feel its approach. As they huddle closer together, shadows dance across the cabin's walls, creating fleeting forms that evoke their darkest fears. In this space, they find both comfort and the looming spectre of desperation. It is a duality that fuels their will to survive, yet weighs heavily upon their minds. The wind howls through cracks in the wood, unsettling their fragile confidence. The weight of survival becomes apparent. Each individual must grapple with their own essence, with resilience now measured in trembling breaths. In this tense atmosphere of mingled hope and despair, they must confront the reality of their situation, and they will surely come to realize, as the winds pick up outside, that the true battle for survival is just beginning. Chapter 3: Forging a Future, the Creation of Tools. The biting wind cuts through the narrow ravine, a relentless reminder of the isolation surrounding the disjointed group. Each gust stirs the ground, sending a dusting of dry earth swirling into their faces. The survivors, faces drawn, gather around a flickering fire, their breath-forming wispy clouds in the frigid air. They sit low, as though instinctively protecting themselves from both the cold and the vast emptiness of the Auckland Isles. In this moment, hunger gnaws at their insides, a pressing urgency that reminds them of their fragile existence. Days stretch into weeks, and the promise of food becomes a shimmering mirage. The strong must become resourceful or perish. Craftsmanship emerges as a lifeline, a transformation of desperation into ingenuity. Surrounded by natural resources, they turn to what the earth provides. Each survivor possesses varying degrees of understanding of tools and their applications, but necessity weaves a common thread among them. In this crucible of survival, knowledge becomes a currency. They scour the jagged coastline for scrap metal. There, among the seaweed and stone, lies remnants from shipwrecks. Rusted iron, battered nails, and bits of discarded machinery glint dully in the sparse sunlight. It is there that the seeds of innovation sprout, a chance to turn mundane scraps into something life-sustaining. With simple tools fashioned from the environment, they commence the process of building a forge. The odd pieces of metal are gathered, each fragment carefully examined, each decision weighed against the dying light of day. Heavy stones become the foundation, crude but effective, pieced together with determination. The survivors work side by side, the rhythm of their labor a silent acknowledgement of shared resolve. The forge begins to take shape. Secure in their methodical assembly, they pile earth and stone, creating a hollow space that will cradle the flames. Each layer is a thoughtful act of defiance against their situation, a statement that they refuse to be dictated by despair. As dusk falls, they scour the woods for fuel. Branches snap underfoot, and dry leaves rustle in the darkness. The scent of damp earth mixes with the sharpness of pine as they gather driftwood and fallen limbs. Each piece is a testament to their fight for survival and an act of faith in the possibility of tomorrow. When the forge is complete, a new phase begins. The survivors draw upon what little they know of smelting. They remember the fire's heat, the glow of molten metal they have seen in dreams or past experiences. Using spare hands and unyielding desire, they stoke the flames fiercely. The fire dances, embers flicker into the black, a primitive heart beating in the cold night. Their breaths hitch in a moment of anticipation. They shove shattered iron fragments into the forge and watch as the heat intensifies. The flames roar hungrily, devouring the kindling. The raw metal softens, transforming under the crucible of fire. With each passing minute, they witness the alchemical movement of solid to liquid, an elemental shift that endows lifeless scraps with the potential for creation. In the blurred line between exhaustion and exhilaration, ideas ignite. They envision tools, hooks for fishing, blades for carving through the flesh of game, spades for tilling the ground that may one day yield sustenance. As the molten metal bubbles, a feeling of possibility envelopes the group. They dip makeshift molds into the molten flow, shaping the iron, an act of trust in their own potential. Thickened hands grasp at the handles emerging from the shifting liquid. The air around the forge grows acrid, the smoke curling upwards, thick like the weight of shared dreams. They inhale deeply, driven by hope and hunger. Crude tools take form, rough but rugged, made for the purpose of survival. Each bend of iron is not merely physical, it is an imprint of their spirit. When the first tools solidify, a strained silence blankets the group. They handle the primitive creations with a reverence only desperation can forge. The weight of the iron in their palms speaks volumes, a promise of labor yet to come, a potential pathway to nourishment that extends beyond the empty stomachs that echo in the cold night. As day breaks, a palette of greys and blues washes over the landscape. The survivors crave the taste of success. They ready themselves, tools in hand, to gather food from the sea and land. The stillness cloaked in silence is broken only by the distant cries of seabirds, a reminder of the survival that plays out in every element of this rugged isle. But as they step away from the forge, an unsettling realization ripples through the group. Their tools are only as effective as their skills in using them. With those first strikes against wood and flesh, the fragile ecosystem of survival clicks into place. They know that the world outside continues to impose its own ruthless challenges. Weather patterns may shift, and the tides may not always favor them. Just as hope rekindles, The ever-looming uncertainty of fate strains the air. Clouds gather on the horizon, dark and heavy, a forewarning of what may come. In the midst of invention and renewed purpose, an unyielding reminder of nature's volatility creeps in, a hostile force that waits, always, just out of sight. As shadows deepen, a gust of wind sweeps across the fragile flame, whispering the precariousness of their new beginning. The tools they forged, so lovingly shaped, now stand as a testament to their struggle, but the real test is only beginning. Their breath catches in collective understanding. With this fragile flicker of possibility comes the weight of responsibility. Hunger still waits at the door, and with it, the terrifying embrace of the unknown. The storm clouds gather, ominous and heavy, as they prepare to face the crushing reality of tomorrow. Chapter 4. Hunger's Grip, the Fight for Food. The sun hovers low over the Auckland Isles, casting elongated shadows across the rugged terrain. Each flicker of light teeters faintly, like the spirits of men grappling with the inevitable. Days bleed into one another, marked only by the gnawing silence of hunger. With each passing moment, the pangs grow sharper, rawer. The castaways, once men of stature and purpose, now wander like spectres in search of sustenance. Hunger is a relentless predator. With it comes the quiet understanding that survival hinges on food, and the need for nourishment seeps into their bones like the damp chill of the island air. They try to hunt. The mossy undergrowth rustles as they tread carefully, hearts pounding with a desperate hope. The knife blades glint in the sparse sunlight, worn but keen, ready for any creature that might cross their path. A lost rabbit darting among the brambles, perhaps. But the island gives little. The rabbits seem elusive, merely phantoms flitting through the brush, taunting their stalwart resolve. Instead, they find wild roots and tubers, pulling them from the soil with trembling hands. The roots are meager, thin and fibrous, lacking the richness they so desperately crave. When tasted, they bear an earthy bitterness that lingers on their tongues. Chewing becomes a test of patience, a fight against despair. Rats invade their camps, bold and ravenous. These unwelcome guests, drawn to the lingering scent of human existence, nibble at their supplies. Tentative hands grab makeshift clubs, swinging wildly in the hopes of securing meat. Each blow falls with a sense of futility, body and mind worn thin. These creatures are clever, skittish but interested. They feast on the scraps left behind, leaving the castaways feverishly re-evaluating their choices. The thrill of a grateful catch slips further from their grasp. They weigh desperation against morality. Is it time to forfeit their humanity for mere survival? Fishing becomes a flicker of hope. Dense, brackish waters surround the land, filled with shadows that ripple beneath the surface. They craft implements from bone and wood, striving to catch whatever meager life swims beneath. Hours pass, filled with fruitless efforts, visions of the ocean. Depths bring thoughts of abundance, yet the water yields few rewards. The salt water sprays their faces, mingling with the sweat pooling on their brows. Each passing day chips away at resolve. The deep stretch of hunger turns men's minds hazy with thoughts. Visions of meals shared in better days invade their dreams. Memories of fragrant meats, spiced dishes, and laughter around the table are twisted into grotesque spectres. As provisions dwindle, so do their spirits. Murmurs of dissent swirl among the group. Voices once filled with determination now carry the weight of despair. Stomachs roar a mournful tune, and men who once stood shoulder to shoulder contemplate what lies ahead. Seeking solace in foraging, they scavenge the dense foliage. They seek out edible seaweed, fragile fronds that cling to tidal rocks, hope blooming anew. As they harvest, the briny scent of the coast fills their nostrils, a reminder of life teeming in the ocean blue. However, the bitterness of the seaweed clings to their throats. It hurts with every swallow, a constant interplay between desperation and necessity. Days turn into nights, cycles marked by the relentless hunger gnawing away at their very essence. Sleep no longer comes easily. Instead, it steals upon them in fitful waves, dreams haunting them with images of feasting. Occasionally, the sound of the distant ocean provides a measure of comfort. The rhythmic crashing of the waves against cragged rocks offers a semblance of normalcy amidst the turmoil of survival. But as the nights grow longer, the winds howl, carrying a different kind of hunger, a hunger for life itself. Their bodies grow frail, the muscle wasting beneath weathered skin. The thought of fresh meat turns into a fixation. They conceptualize elaborate plans to trap birds or somehow ensnare a seal. Each scheme emerges from deep within the crux of their minds, born from a primal urge to survive. The lengths to which they are willing to go, it weighs heavy. The balance of privacy dwindles. Men are left alone with their thoughts, spiraling inward, jaw clenched against cravings. Yet, despite the toll hunger lays upon them, creativity flickers within their grasps. They fashion rudimentary snares from vines and branches, cementing a fleeting sense of hope. The instinct to survive sharpens their minds, loosening the bonds of despair, even if just for a moment. Upon one harsh morning, the damp fog blankets the island as they emerge from the sanctuary of their makeshift camp. A haunting stillness hangs heavy in the air. They gather, weary but resolute, each man carrying the weight of hunger like a sibling. Their efforts culminate in a break. They see a cluster of seabirds roosting nearby, unaware of the men stalking their territory. A cautious plan unfolds, a moment where hope flickers against despair. Ribbons of adrenaline course through their veins as they inch closer, hearts drumming in sync to the rhythm of survival. And yet, even as they scrape together resources, the hunger remains a blight, a gaping maw that threatens to swallow them whole. The expedition's future hangs by a thread, as unseen dangers lurk just beneath the surface. As dusk descends, the air thickens with tension. The stars prepare to emerge, indifferent to the plight of those who wander beneath. A wailing wind tears through the foliage, an ominous harbinger of what is to come. In the encroaching gloom, they sit by the fire, their eyes reflecting the flickering flames. Silence speaks volumes, resonating with unacknowledged fears. The weight of what is to come bears down heavily. They do not yet know that hunger's grip will lead them to places they had never imagined. The culmination of desperation may soon stretch the very fabric of their humanity, leaving the remnants of what they once were scattered like ashes in the wind. Each man stares into the hungry flames, and they are reminded, survival is not guaranteed. The night grows darker, the hunger sharper, and before the dawn of another day, a grave decision will loom overhead, bound to test them. Chapter 5. Isolation's Toll, Trust and Tension. The Auckland Isles stretch before them, a blend of rugged cliffs and turbulent seas. Each day is a confrontation with nature, but beyond the physical challenges, the shadow of isolation bends the mind. Days morph into weeks. The sun's path across the sky grows monotonous, predictable, yet the monotony harbors an insidious darkness. Fueled by fear and fatigue, doubt begins to seep into the group's psyche. Tension hangs thick in the air, palpable and suffocating. They rise each morning, fighting the urge to bury their heads in the sand against the chill. The bitter cold seeps through their clothes, clinging to their skin like a persistent reminder of their dire circumstances. The relentless wind howls, a sharp commentary on their plight, drowning out whispers of reassurance. With dwindling supplies, the act of gathering food becomes both necessity and source of stress. They comb through the coastal landscape for shellfish, a meager but vital source of nourishment. Each catch feels less like success and more like a temporary reprieve. The quiet gnawing of hunger lingers longer each day. Accusations arise, clawing their way to the surface. A missed catch, a hidden store of supplies, and suddenly trust erodes like the cliffs before the encroaching sea. One remembers hearing rustles at night. Suspicion is the new ruler of their world. "Did you take the last of the fish?" A voice sharpens, a whisper carried by the wind. There's no need to look. They know the eyes that narrow in response, the furtive glances exchanged in the flickering firelight. The fire crackles, a momentary relief against the icy breath of night. Shadows dance, revealing more than just the physical form of their companions. Each flicker casts doubt, illuminating the frayed edges of alliances. Even as isolation tightens its grip, the castaways cling to routine. They scour their surroundings, gathering wood. They struggle against the bitterness in the air. The freezing temperatures threaten to sap their spirits, each snap of a twig echoing the fracture within their group. A newcomer to tension stirs with the approach of winter. Days grow shorter, the sun setting sooner, taking with it the hope of warmth. The increased darkness gives rise to shadows that loom larger than life. Nighttime conversations, once filled with quiet camaraderie, now find their warmth extinguished by the frost between them. The breaking point steals upon them like a thief in the night. Voices once filled with camaraderie turn curt and clipped, words exchanged over meagre meals laced with growing disdain. Trust unravels as quickly as the frayed clothing of those who wear it. Food becomes a currency. Each morsel is weighed with suspicion. Hidden caches of rations come to symbolize survival above even the bonds of fellowship. As they sift through what food remains, scandalous glances reveal the invisible divisions being forged. One castaway hides a newfound stash behind a boulder, believing it to be a bulwark against betrayal. But that false sense of security carries its own burden, a weight that presses down as isolation swells within each heart. Night falls. The stars blink in and out, indifferently watching over the fragile embers of their fire. Silhouettes huddle tighter, a physical manifestation of their inward fears. The encroaching cold seeps deeper than skin. It whispers to their minds, crafting tales of impending doom. And yet, survival is a stubborn force. Amidst this growing tension, there remains a flicker of determination. They have survived together, endured the elements and the longing for home. There is comfort in this shared ordeal, despite the fractures that appear. But as tensions spiral, sleep brings no respite. The isolation becomes a relentless tormentor, robbing them of rest. Rumors twist in the dark. Who has let the group down? Who watches with eyes that betray hidden intentions? Amidst urgent whispers of distrust, a decision looms just out of reach. The group gathers around the dwindling fire, its flames flickering in response to the chill they cannot escape. Tension thickens, suffocating, like the frost that clings to their throats. In those profound moments of uncertainty, a storm brews not only in the skies above, but within their very souls. As dawn approaches, uncertainty holds its breath, ready to unleash consequences that have yet to unfold. Another day dawns with cracks appearing in their unity. The question weighs on them all. How long can they hold on to the fabric of trust before it tears completely? Each heart beats louder in that stillness, echoing the tension growing ever more palpable in the chilly morning air. Would they become their own worst enemies in their fight for survival? It is here, at this tipping point, that the true test of their endurance will begin, as nature waits silently to claim the weaker threads of their collective spirit. The wind whispers, tomorrow holds even greater uncertainty. Chapter 6. Unbeknownst to each other, the second stranded group. A thick fog envelops the Auckland Isles, blurring the line between sea and sky. The air is heavy, carrying the damp chill of salt water. On this desolate shore, the remnants of the shipwrecked vessel, the Invercord, lie scattered among the jagged rocks. Its masts are splintered, and the hull has surrendered to the relentless waves. Survivors cling to life, battles waged against nature's unyielding grip. Just a few miles away, hunger gnaws at the bellies of the second strayed group. They too have experienced sudden devastation. The Invercord had been bound for Australia, aimed at discovery and potential prosperity, but fate reigned with an iron hand. The evening of the wreck was consumed by chaos. A sudden storm rolled in, dark and foreboding, the warning signs lost among their aspirations. The wind howled, screaming through the rigging as sheets of rain cut through the air. The deck turned into a battleground as the crew fought desperately to avoid capsizing. With a bone-shuddering crash, the vessel was pitched against rocky outcrops. Wood splintered under pressure, and bodies were tossed like ragdolls in the tempest. The inclination to survive overrode rational thought, as the crew scrambled, not knowing where to go. Then came silence, abrupt and heavy. The world outside became a fractured reflection of chaos. In the aftermath, the survivors found themselves on the shore, disoriented and struggling, shivering under the dim presence of twilight. Among them, a few prominent figures emerged: Captain Thomas Smith, a weathered sailor hardened by years at sea, and Elizabeth Walsh, a fierce spirit whose resolve shone through the enveloping gloom. Night settled like a shroud, concealing the injustices of the world as cold seeped into their bones. The reality of their situation pierced through the fog, a stark awareness of scant provisions. The food they had managed to salvage from the wreck was meagre: a few barrels of salted fish, already starting to rot, and some dried biscuits, their contents already diminished after days of uncertainty. They gather around a hastily built fire, the flames flickering weakly against the frigid air. With each passing moment, their shared warmth seems to diminish alongside their hope. Exhaustion weighs on them, sleep a fleeting luxury. The first night is primarily spent arranging their survival. A shelter must be built. The landscape offers scant refuge, only spines of grass clinging defiantly to the earth. Captain Smith organizes the group, directing their fractured energies to gather driftwood and tarps. Each individual leverages their skills, yet a shared anxiety lingers. Every decision becomes vital, and time is slipping away. Days shift into weeks, the sun never fully illuminating their dismal encampment. The cold etches deeper into their bodies. They forage for sustenance, dipping into the desolate horizon. With each attempt, hopes rise, only to fall into an abyss of disappointment. Elizabeth steps into the dense brush, her heart heavy with the illusion of abundance. She scrambles through foliage, tirelessly searching for edible greens or any signs of life. Her fingers brush along cold, damp earth, scavenging for roots, but all is barren. The rumbling of her stomach echoes against the silence around her, a ceaseless reminder of their circumstances. Connection to the land, fundamental for survival, becomes increasingly tenuous. They continue to explore the visual familiarity of what they once knew: the vibrant countryside, abundant gardens, and open markets. These fleeting memories serve only as harsh contrasts against the stark grey underbrush. Desperation mounts. The salty tang of the ocean now brings only dread. Each morning breaks with the realization of ration depletion. They search for fish, casting makeshift nets into the unforgiving sea, hoping for sustenance, but frequently returning empty-handed. The second night on the island, the tide retreats, revealing rocky outcroppings burdened with barnacles. A sense of frustration and fatigue fills the air. They sit around a dying fire, the wood crackling with diminished authority. Captain Smith's weathered hands tremble with exertion, contemplative in a way that hints at darker thoughts. The bitter wind howls in the distance, echoing against the cliff face. They look to the horizon, wondering if the waves might bring a miracle, or perhaps another misfortune. The sound of crashing surf becomes a backdrop to their growing despair. They are isolated even from hope. Time drags on inexorably. Each sunrise bleeds into the next, punctuated with the weight of reimagined gastronomy, thoughts of fish stews and hearty breads. Their dreams feed on illusions, while reality remains stark. Rations are receding, hope dims, and the land offers no nourishment. Elizabeth stares towards the sea. Each crested wave that crashes into the shore feels like a warning. The innate impulse to scream into the void is stifled by fatigue, uncertainty, and a grim acceptance that life is fleeting. Weeks pass with no sign of rescue. They cluster more closely around the dwindling fire. Each flicker of light a dance with desperation. They speak in hushed tones about what they should do if hope fails. The term survival begins to unravel the seams of their camaraderie. They sense a new infectious dread spreading among them. the ravages of starvation become palpable. The periphery of consciousness shifts from camaraderie to self-preservation. Every day their spirits dim further, resembling the shadows that stretch against the fading light. Conversations become hushed, the air thick with an unspoken understanding. Time is short. One evening, a soft cry emerges from the brush, echoing in the stillness. The sounds of humans fill the void, swirling in and out of their tired minds. Panic is not an option. The dull realization forms. Another group exists on this lonely shore. Perhaps they are close. Perhaps another chance waits within reach. But the desperate feeling of isolation settles like an anchor deep within them. A decision must be made. The question hangs heavy in the air. Should they venture outside their wretched camp, or remain huddled against the unknown that only vegetation seems to provide? On this grim precipice of uncertainty, a flicker of hope intertwines with desperation. The chance of connection might bring both salvation or ruin. Yet the fire crackles perilously low, and the cold grips tighter around their bodies. Unaware of each other, both groups navigate their shadows in a landscape of despair. They are connected by a thin thread of survival, waiting profoundly for their parallel journeys to collide in the unyielding darkness of the Auckland Isles. What lies ahead is inevitable, the convergence of two fates intertwined by nature's brutal hand. They are bound not only by their survival, but by the silent struggles that rage, unbeknownst to one another. As the days stretch into weeks, the reality of scarcity weighs heavily upon the castaways of the Auckland Isles. They face a relentless battle against nature, a challenge that grows more daunting with each sunrise. One inescapable truth prevails: survival hinges on their ability to adapt. With food supplies dwindling, the atmosphere shifts. Each rumble of a stomach echoes the growing tension among the group. Frost clings stubbornly to the outskirts of their makeshift camp, a stark reminder of the frigid air that penetrates their bones. Hunger gnaws at their resolve. Mornings come slow and quiet, marked by the exhaustion etched on their faces. They gather, discussing their dwindling provisions in hushed tones. The last of the hard biscuits crumbles into dust, each morsel a memory of better times. They trek along the rocky shoreline, scanning the landscape for signs of life. Eyes search the jagged cliffs and tangled underbrush, hoping for a glimpse of something, anything, that could be food. Each passing day brings new desperation. Their minds race with possibilities, weighing the risks of various foraging strategies. The group divides, a calculated decision made on a frayed edge of hope. Some take to the open water in a small dinghy, hoping to catch fish, while others scour the land for edible plants. The sea, once a source of sustenance, transforms into an unpredictable force. Waves crash against the fragile vessel, their hearts pounding with each swell. Back on shore, the remaining castaways comb the undergrowth. They dig cautiously, fingers working through damp soil. With the promise of tubers and roots, spirits lift momentarily. They cling to the promise of nourishment as they unearth the earth's hidden offerings. Yet, as the sun sinks low, the dark realization settles in. Survival is not simply about finding food. The camaraderie strengthening in this struggle is tested with each new decision. Straining against hunger, they ponder the ethics of their choices. Would they resort to taking desperate measures to feed their own? In the dim light, nerves fray. Subtle glances flicker between them, unspoken accusations sharpening the air. The fear of scarcity becomes palpable as they sit, eyes reflecting waning hope. The sun dips below the horizon, leaving a chill that seeps deep into their skin. Even in the stillness, each breath feels heavy. They contemplate the slimy slugs they once avoided, pondering their nutrition against the bitter taste that lingers in their mouths. In a moment of grim determination, one reaches for a slimy morsel, teeth sinking into the unfamiliar texture. Sacrifices become necessary as days stretch into an endless loop of want and need. The risks multiply. Shadows lengthen with the encroaching night, their fears stalking them in silence. During a midnight expedition, One of the castaways ventures farther than the rest. The darkness envelops him, a disorienting maze of sounds and sensations. Each crack of a branch echoes in the stillness, heightening his awareness, a sensation both electric and paralyzing. He imagines the possibilities just beyond his grasp. What if he encounters the birds that once thrived in the trees? What if the hunt for nutrient-rich seabirds proves successful? It's a gamble, the stakes high, the risks only increasing. Alone, he presses forward, heart racing in anticipation, battling internal doubts of whether it is worth the solitude. Meanwhile, the rest wage war against their inherent skepticism as they try to innovate their cooking methods. A fire flickers in a makeshift pit, its light offering a brief respite from the deepening shadows. They gather around it, voices low, discussing the preparation of whatever edible scraps they can salvage. The scent of burnt remnants fills the air, a reminder of what remains and what is sacrificed. Conversations of improvised recipes swirl in the flickering light. They sift through possibilities that range from palatable to utterly disgusting. They form a crude broth with whatever they have, their stomachs yearning for warmth amidst the chill. As the concoction simmers, they hesitate to taste it. Anticipation weighs upon them, each of them acutely aware that this moment is a test. Desperation is a beast, lurking just beneath the surface. They know the toll that hunger exacts, not just upon the body, but upon the fractured bonds of their community. The pot, filled with murky liquid, is quiet as they all lean in. One brave soul finally scoops a spoonful, watching others' eyes intently. He sips, uncertain, a moment stretching infinitely before he shares his verdict. The group leans closer, breaths caught in their throats, waiting for a sign that may either quench or fuel their fears. And yet, beyond the physical manifestation of scarcity, a deeper anxiety festers. Are they still united, or has hunger begun to fracture them? The air grows colder. Isolation can creep in subtly. The unexpressed doubts hang like dense fog. All their knowing looks laden with unspoken words. In the weeks that follow, they delve deeper into drastic measures. Conflicts break into the open, their tensions boiling over as hunger coils tighter around them. Each castaway must confront the fragility of their alliances. Can they afford to trust each other, or will this dire situation pull them apart? The landscape offers little respite in this relentless struggle. The chill seeps into their bones, overwhelmed by the sense of impending consequences. Each decision bears weight, and the thin line they tread becomes perilously narrow. Pushing limits, even ones they thought immutable, begins to feel inevitable. The chilling winds howl as night falls, a symphony of nature's forces against their frail existence. Exhaustion gnaws at the edges of their determination. Hope flickers dimly, overshadowed by the burden of scarcity. Through it all, one question looms above them, a spectre of decisions yet to be made. How far will they go to survive? Each castaway feels the gravitational pull of that query, recognizing that their choices define not just their own fate, but the future of the group as a whole. And yet, at the fringes of their thoughts, a chilling realization dawns. The sea looms wide and vast, its depths harboring both opportunity and peril. There is life beneath its surface, if only they dare to pursue it. What lies in wait as they contemplate this next gamble? With darkness thickening around them, the castaways must weigh the unknown against their dwindling hope. As the final embers of their makeshift fire flicker and fade, the chill bites deeper. The hunger grows. A decision looms. Would they dare to brave the uncharted waters in search of sustenance, clasping their last thread of survival? They must confront the depths of their desperation, knowing that choices now will echo through the days that follow. As the weeks stretch into months, the survivors of the Auckland Isles find themselves trapped in a desperate silence. Days blend into one another, and the rhythmic crashing of the waves feels like a metronome marking their endurance. The salt air hangs heavy with an underlying tension, a palpable yearning for rescue that thickens with each passing moment. The landscape, wild and unyielding, offers scant comfort. Jagged cliffs rise ominously against a tumultuous sea, while dense scrub envelops the survivors in an oppressive embrace. Despite the harshness of their surroundings, a flicker of hope ignites within the hearts of the castaways, urging them onward. They cling to the notion that someone will see their plight. To communicate their need for rescue, the individuals devise makeshift signals. They gather materials left scattered by the wreck of the Grafton, repurposing timber and salvaged debris into large, irregular shapes. On the beach, they construct a crude signal, a desperate plea against the backdrop of relentless isolation. The survivors labor tirelessly, their hands blistered and raw from the effort. Each stroke of their hands against the wood brings them closer to a moment that might change everything. The sun scorches down, relentless, a reminder of both their vulnerability and enduring resolve. They arrange the timber into the letters of SOS, a universal cry for help that resonates with their shared plight. Every attempt feels weighted with significance. Each glance toward the horizon becomes a moment of intensity. They want to see a sail, a flash of movement, but the ocean remains indifferent, as vast and unwavering as ever. Time slips by, slow and languid. They incorporate bits of fabric into their signals, ripping old shirts and trousers into strips. The colors stand out starkly against the earth tones of the island, a jarring reminder of their humanity in a landscape that feels increasingly unforgiving. Each piece of fabric fluttering in the wind serves as both a beacon and a tether to the world they once knew. Yet the reality of their situation continues to gnaw at the edges of their optimism. Hunger sharpens their senses, but dulls their strength. The meager supplies are dwindling dangerously low, and the memory of hearty meals feels like a distant echo. Stomach growls reverberate against the quiet of the landscape, and with each pang, the desire for rescue intensifies. As they work, the survivors share stories around meager fires at night, their voices low, reverberating through the darkness. These tales become a lifeline, a way to keep the spirit of camaraderie alive. They talk of loved ones, of safety, of returning home, yet the glimmer of hope intertwines with the creeping dread of their circumstances. The nights are long and cold, shadows creeping in as the sun dips below the horizon. The temperature plunges, each degree a cruel reminder of their vulnerability. The ink in their journals freezes, rendering their accounts a fractured narrative of resilience battling against despair. In this world, the fight for survival demands unwavering determination. Yet hope is a fickle thread. As the seasons change, the winds begin to shift, bringing with them ominous clouds that swirl above. They can feel the whispers of a coming storm, the air heavy with moisture, ready to unleash its fury. The survivors speak in hushed tones about the weather, the wind in their hair feeling like a warning breeze. Then it arrives. Rain falls hard, a relentless torrent that soaks through their makeshift shelters. Their signaling efforts are dampened, their semaphore muted beneath the sheets of water. The letters, once bold and vivid, are smeared and washed away, a cruel metaphor for their dwindling hopes. The storm rages, a tumultuous beast overhead, growing ever more violent. Stripped of their means to signal, they must shift their focus. They gather remnants of materials, now soaked by the deluge, and look to the sky for any indication of passing ships. The ocean roars defiantly, waves crashing against the cliffs, an elemental reminder of nature's magnitude. Days pass amid the storm. All around them, life feels tenebrous. They struggle to keep fires lit, as firewood becomes waterlogged and unstable. The survivors huddle closer, exchanging warmth, their bodies instinctively seeking solace in shared space. There is a weight to their silence, a collective understanding of the potential futility in their situation. In an attempt to stay visible, they rely on flights of imagination. They illuminate the nights with makeshift torches. Frayed cloths, soaked in whatever flammable material they can muster, are lit. the flames flickering weakly against the dark rain-soaked sky. They take turns watching the horizon, staring into the blackness for a glimmer of hope. Hours bleed into days. The storm ebbs, giving way to brilliant, yet haunting, sunlight. The sun returns, a deceptive balm that burns scorching against their skin. Though it may warm their bodies, it betrays them in other ways. It reveals the true extent of their hardships. The beaches are littered with debris, remnants of their feeble attempts to signal for rescue. Amid this disarray, a sudden realization takes shape. They know they must try again, not just for themselves, but for each other. Their refusal to succumb has become a lifeline. Determined, they gather what remains from the wreckage of the past few weeks. They scour the island, finding new materials in the unforgiving landscape. Bits of fabric are salvaged from the edges of their shelters. Strips of what was once clothing and gear are woven together, creating larger shapes, bold enough to be seen from afar. With renewed vigor, they piece together new signals aimed toward the horizon. They know that ships may pass in the distance, unaware of their plight, adrift in a world of their own. This is their last chance. They might not be able to change the suffering around them, but they can change their visibility. And then, in that moment of creation, something shifts again. A figure appears on the edge of the horizon on the 7th day post-storm, a silhouette, elusive against the shimmer of sunlight on the water. It is a long promise of hope stretching toward them, glistening like a mirage. They avert their eyes to scrutinize the ghostly shape, anticipation brimming like a tidal wave. A surge of energy rushes through their veins. The distant vessel is an awakening, a reminder of the urgency that propels them towards survival. But the wind carries a different story. As quickly as it appears, the vessel vanishes beneath the swell of the sea, absorbed by the horizon, leaving silence in its wake. Reality crashes down heavily against their spirits once more. How many more days would they be left, waiting in uncertainty? As the sun drops lower, spilling orange light across the water, a grim realization settles. The hopes born of visibility entwine with the reality of their isolation. They cannot afford to wait in despair. They must act. Each flicker of hope brings with it the weight of survival, but at what cost? While the ocean remains a mirror of endless loss, it beckons their next decision. They may be castaways, but they will refuse to let this moment define them. With weary hearts and hands, they prepare, driven by an insatiable determination. The night awaits, and with it, the uncertain promise of another dawn. The sun rises slowly over the Auckland Isles, the light filtering through a blanket of thick, heavy clouds. It casts a muted brightness on the rugged landscape. Layers of mist cling to the cliffs, wrapping the island in a shroud of dampness. The air is sharp and laden with the scent of salt and decaying vegetation. Days blend into one another, and both groups of castaways feel the weight of their isolation. Desperation gnaws at them, a constant companion. The Grafton castaways hollowly stomp on the ground, their boots heavy with mud. Each movement becomes more laborious as the cold seeps deeper into their bones. They gather what scant provisions remain, their rationing strained to the breaking point. Food sources dwindle, nothing stirs in the underbrush. They glance at one another, the understanding in their eyes unspoken. Each day without sustenance pulls them closer to a haunting reality. Starvation lurks just out of sight, a ravenous beast waiting to pounce. Across the island, the other group, those stranded from the ship, the Sydney, experiences their own torment. Menacing hunger pains ripple through their stomachs, echoing the desperation they feel. Their resources wiggle thin, almost like a fading ember. The last of their biscuit supplies, a mere half-pound, is divided into slivers, each piece a bitter reminder of their plight. Among them, the landscape grows hostile. The tree line becomes a ghostly silhouette against the dimming light. Searching for food, they venture deeper into the uninhabited parts of the island. Each footfall is cautious, wary of the unseen dangers around them. The wind whips the stark branches, a symphony of rustling leaves, reminding them that they are not alone, yet still so utterly isolated. Their breath steams in the frigid air, the chill creeping under their skins. As they wander, the bushes offer no solace or sustenance. No wildlife darts out to greet them, no familiar sounds of life. The wild silence is oppressive. Each man checks his instincts against betrayal, that internal battle of hope versus despair. Meanwhile, the Grafton group decides to extend their search beyond their established perimeter. Perhaps the vegetation yields something edible. Perhaps their luck will finally turn. They tread carefully, each crack of a twig underfoot louder than a shout in this tenuous calm. On the horizon, the shadows of their intentions begin to converge, each group unaware that destiny quietly beckons them toward each other, building to an inevitable meeting. Their stomachs growl as desperation coalesces into determination. They push forward, beyond fatigue and uncertainty. As hours slip by, the landscape transforms slightly. Scrub brush becomes denser. The air thickens with the scent of earth and moss. A momentary flicker of hope ignites within. Perhaps fruit hangs undiscovered in the branches above, or fresh water flows nearby. The thought draws them on. Time morphs, and as the shadows stretch across the ground, both groups navigate with almost instinctual pursuit. They are mere figures swallowed by the landscape, drawn by whispers of survival, but aware that they are not alone. At the cliff's edge, overlooking a narrow valley, nature lays bare its harsh beauty. With each breath, the anticipation builds. Their hunger, their solitary trails through dense foliage, all draw them closer to the unspoken truth. They see movement. From different vantage points, both groups stop. Eyes narrow in disbelief. Is it a mirage? A trick of the wind? The realization washes over them in a wave of shared relief and shock. Survivors, other lives, weathered and drawn. Faces gaunt but alive. But there is no joy in this moment. They stand on the precipice of an unanticipated fate. It twists into something heavy, as every thought now weighs on collaboration, collective survival. Both groups are dangerously near to reaping the mutual benefit that can only come through unity. As silence stretches taut between them, a shared understanding flickers. They know they must confront the stark facts of their existence. Isolation is the enemy. Together, they may fend off the spectres of starvation that lurk ever closer. The interval of this newfound connection hangs precariously in the air. They are merely shadows of what they once were, yet the resolve builds. But before they can advance, a scream erupts from the brush. Unanticipated, raw. It shatters the stillness of their reunion, sending ripples of dread through both groups. The source of the sound lies hidden, buried in the primordial landscape. The fear of the unknown bleeds into the atmosphere, reminding them that while togetherness may offer a glimmer of hope, it could also ignite old rivalries or fresh conflicts. The reality swells. Will they join forces, or will fear drive them apart? The encroaching night circles around them, tinged with both the power of unity and the lurking threat of dissolution. As tension hangs thick, they feel the bite of uncertainty settling in. Both groups find themselves at a crucial juncture, aware that the next decision could seal their fates in any direction. And so they stand, breath held tight in the chilling air, unsure of what tomorrow may bring, wholly aware that survival often demands a choice between trust and treachery. As dawn breaks over the Auckland Isles, the air is heavy with the scent of salt and seaweed. The sunlight filters through the fog, illuminating the jagged landscape. The two camps, once separated by fear and distrust, now stand on the precipice of a fragile alliance. The survivors from the Grafton and the castaways from the Invercold gather, their faces gaunt and hollow. They share a singular pressing need, survival. Silence hangs thick like the morning mist, each person weighed down by the collective suffering that binds them. They move cautiously towards each other, hands cast forward as if to gauge the other's intent. Tentative glances reveal sunken eyes, each reflecting the harsh reality of prolonged exposure to the elements. The prospect of collaboration seems to flicker like the dying embers of a fire, yet there is no turning back. Warmth is a rare commodity, and the temperature continues to drop, leaving skin numb and chapped. The groups huddle around a newly kindled fire, its flames flickering against the blustery wind. The heat, however feeble, draws them together, coaxing a semblance of hope in the midst of despair. Each camp brings its own knowledge, forged under different circumstances. The survivors of the Grafton are familiar with fishing and foraging. They have long relied on their knowledge of the ocean, yet their experience comes with a price. They are accustomed to the brutality of starvation, and their bodies reflect this battle. In contrast, the Invercord castaways have developed skills in land survival. Their experience harvesting roots and berries may offer a crucial advantage. They share stories of their attempts to cultivate meager crops, derived from scant descriptions of edible flora, found in journals left behind by those who ventured before them. At first, the atmosphere is tense. Memories of isolation linger, making it difficult to bridge the gaps forged by circumstance. A hunger for food manifests as an unspoken desire for dominance. Yet, as the days wear on, the necessity for sustainability becomes glaringly clear. The landscape is unforgiving, with little to yield from its remote terrain. Cold wind howls across the landscape, and long shadows stretch across the barren ground. A common goal emerges amidst the frigid air. Resource management takes shape as both parties begin pooling their skills and experiences. They establish a roster of tasks. They plan their foraging, dividing the land into sections. Each group understands the importance of kinship forged by struggle. Together, they craft efficient strategies for hunting. But conflict simmers below the surface, as old grievances resurface in whispered disputes over territory and methods. The days turn to weeks, and with each passing hour, the shared challenges fortify their resolve. Cooperative fishing trips weave the watermen together. They teach each other techniques for setting lines and nets, reviving the very spirit they thought long lost. Every fish caught becomes a symbol of unity. The taste of fresh food is a luxury, a reminder of life beyond survival. They share the bounty, allowing hope to flow between them. Each meal is savoured, boosting their morale, encouraging laughter amidst the bleakness. As the sun descends and twilight creeps in, conversations become more audacious. Ideas sprout like wildflowers through the cracks of their harsh reality. They ponder the possibility of constructing shelters with grass and driftwood, a home built together, a place to retreat from the chilling winds that bite at their exposed skin each night. Laughter mingles with the sound of the sea, but the spectre of hunger remains ever present. Food becomes the lifeline that binds them together. Each day requires a careful balance. Their combined efforts yield marginal gains, yet it feels increasingly strained under the weight of expectations. The harsh weather further complicates their arrangement. Sleet pummels the earth, turning solid ground into treacherous muck. They find themselves battling not just the elements, but also each other's frustrations. Patience wears thin as they navigate the destructive nature of despair. Suddenly, isolation breeds panic. Supplies dwindle more quickly than anticipated. Those who once feasted together now eye each other's rations, cloaked in the shadows of survival instinct. They gather again, this time to confront uncertainties that loom larger than before. Each participant senses the storm building, both inside and outside. The talks, once filled with cautious optimism, now yield hardened stares. Each person stands at a precipice of doubt. Lastly, a moment of realization settles among them. United, they may stand a chance, but division threatens to erode what little they've built. The dark clouds gather above, casting an ominous shadow across the cliffs. The elements have thrown down the gauntlet. Together, they must face the cold and the hunger that gnaw at the edges of their unity. But as the sun dips below the horizon, the urgency of their plight becomes impossible to ignore. They know winter's true fury has yet to be unleashed, and just beyond the horizon, the storm brews, a reflection of their unraveling cooperation. Endgame, the harsh reality of rescue. The journey of the castaways from the Auckland Isles is one etched into history, a testimony of human survival against the omnipotent forces of nature. After 20 long months adrift in the depths of isolation, the winds of fate shifted, bringing the promise of rescue. Yet, for those who survived, the echoes of their ordeal ripple through time, a haunting testament to what it means to confront the abyss. Upon their return, the survivors were met not with heroes' welcomes, but with the cold scrutiny of society. Their bodies were subdued, weathered by harsh winds and relentless gales. Faces once vibrant, now lined with the deep creases of hardship. Even the warmth of civilization could not thaw the chilling memories that coursed through their veins. Imagine, if you will, stepping back into a world that once felt familiar, yet now seemed foreign. The cacophony of daily life contrasts sharply with the silence of solitude they endured. They carried with them heavy burdens, unshakable shadows of loss and survival that whispered tales of desperation and hope. With each step on solid ground, the memories of frigid nights, gnawing hunger, and the scent of damp earth mixed with decay weave through their consciousness. They had fought against starvation, wrestled with despair, and clawed their way through suffering to emerge once more in the light of day. The battles they waged were not only against nature, but within themselves, for what they overcame can never be fully measured by flesh or bone. They stood upon the shores of familiarity, yet the weight of their past felt like shackles upon their souls. And as they looked out at the ocean that had both imprisoned and released them, a haunting realization lingered in the air. It was not just the fear of death that clawed at their minds, but an unending wrestle with their own mortality. This tale does not conclude with the arrival of the rescue ship. It evolves into a reflection on how the human spirit can endure overwhelming trials, yet emerges forever altered. The stories of their sacrifices and the survivors' resilient will became a saga of forgotten whispers amid the clamour of life, marked only by glimpses into the fragility of our existence. Each castaway became a vessel of powerful narratives, shaping a legacy rich with lessons learned from the abyss. They emerged not merely as survivors, but as living embodiments of the relentless push against nature's darkest forces. And yet, as the world moved on, how many remembered their names? How many fathomed the depths of their struggle? In the silence that follows history's wreckage, we find echoes of their journey speaking to us, urging reflection on resilience, survival, and the indelible marks left upon the human psyche. The harrowing experiences of these castaways shout through time, imploring us never to forget the weight of what it means to endure unfathomable hardship. As we close the chapter on the Auckland Isles, it is not merely the end of a story, it is a beginning to contemplate what we understand of ourselves through the eyes of those who walk the edge of survival. If this history has left its mark on you, leave a like. It tells me you survived the journey. Drop a comment below. I want to know what part of this story haunted you most. Join me next time as we delve into another unsettling tale of human endurance, one rooted in the chilling trials of those who face the earth's ruthless machinations without the solace of hope.